Hey everybody, it's Chris over at Dixieland Farm. Got Marissa here, and today we're going to be talking about vacations and pandemics, and you and me and Marissa and the whole thing. So we originally had a trip planned in May to go to Cocoa Beach. We were going to get a nice condo right there on the water. We booked it at least a year in advance, I believe, and our plans were to do everything in kind of Central Florida that we've always seen or wanted to do, but never make it away from the theme parks and to experience those things. And then this happened, right? So plans changed. It is canceled. We have pushed it off till next May, which we hope we will get to go and experience all those things. We also have a trip tentatively planned in November, which I would say 25% it'll probably happen, 75% not happen. The other was going to Universal. It was going to go after Halloween Horror Nights, which I'm sure can't happen.
Again,
We don't know.
we don't know. There's a lot of unknown.
Yeah, and it's just a lot of guessing, right? And Marissa's parents were going to come, but they are senior citizens. Some of them have health concerns, so being in a big public area is...
Or flying.
Flying
They
is
live
probably...
not in Florida. They live in the Northeast and would have to fly there. And I don't know when it's going to be safe for people to fly again in general, much less people who are at a higher risk population.
Right, so getting there will be a problem. Being in a crowd will be a problem. And of course, we just don't know how theme parks are going to be. They actually had an exception at Disneyland, and I think in Florida for the theme parks, that all the other places were closing down, but they were allowed to stay open. But the theme parks themselves closed down originally for just a few weeks, then a month, and now until basically 2.5 months they're closed until they figure out how can they operate as a business.
And as of right now, there is no scheduled date to reopen. There's nothing.
And how are they going to open? How could they possibly open with crowds of people? And will it be the same? Obviously, it won't quite be the same until there's a full-on vaccine or a medication that treats and kind of eliminates the deadliness of the pandemic. So we can only guess, and they've kind of been throwing things out there like temperature checks, and temperature checks would certainly help. If somebody is sick, they shouldn't go in the park. That would enforce it, but of course you can be a carrier and not have a temperature.
You can also have a temperature for a myriad of other things that aren't coronavirus.
But that's also good. You probably shouldn't be in a park. If you have the flu, you are, not potentially killing people, but you are potentially making people sick. And of course, it is an international destination. So just because we are kind of used to bugs from our country doesn't mean we're used to bugs in other countries. And when we used to go to Disney, we would often get sick. The last few years we have not been.
But we were more diligent, I think, washing our hands and using hand sanitizer over the last several trips.
Yeah, and just being more mindful of our hands. And also, maybe it just wasn't the peak season for those things, perhaps, I don't know. But one time I was standing at a bus terminal waiting to go back to our resort, and a kid turned around and sneezed in my face, and then like 2-3 days later I was sick. So the kid didn't want to sneeze on mom, but sneezing into the mouth and eyes of a perfect stranger was acceptable. So those are kind of things that you just...
Well, you look at things like handrails, the handrails on the ride lines, the handrails on the bars that you hold on to on the roller coasters. What, are they going to sanitize those between every passenger? I mean,
right. So
I have no idea how they mitigate the possible
big crowds, to watch the fireworks. I don't think are going to happen until there's a vaccine. So the idea of parades, all of those things.
Which also then begs the question: if Disney, Universal, these theme parks have to cut back on their offerings because of all of this, do you still want to go?
Also, they're not going to change the price, right? Because they've had such a financial hit. So you're getting less for what you paid for, and restaurants are going to probably be different
No
in
buffets.
some. So there's all of that going on. But this was not actually a theme park year for us. So if you follow our channel, watch our travel vlogs, if that's what you are interested in, you saw that we went a lot in 2018 and 2019. We used up a lot of our DVC points, which is our timeshare at Disney. We actually depleted it, so we weren't planning on using those points at all this year because we've used, I think, most of them. And we were going to start up again in 2021, late 2021, and do the whole thing all over again. So 2021, December-ish, and then just park constantly in 2022. And when all the kind of construction was over, but now that's also part of it. Constructions have been delayed. Will the plans that they were working on, the projects they were actually demolishing and building, will those things happen, or will it just be like a big empty construction zone for years until they get financially back on their feet? We don't know. Regardless. Now this is where it gets more personal. So while we went on a lot of trips in 2018 and 2019, we have not had a day off since December 2019.
And that's not rhetoric, that's the truth. Unless we are physically not here at the farm, there's not a day that goes by where we're not doing work here on the farm. So the only time we get what normal people would consider a day off is if we physically pack up and leave. Otherwise, we work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Well, aside from the sleeping time, when we're sleeping. So we have not had a day away from the farm and daily chores since December 8th. So we're going on for almost 5 months.
5 months at this point. And on our most relaxed day where we've got people taking care of the farm, we still have roughly 3 to 4 hours of chores that we do on that day. So our least amount of work...
It still involves getting up at 6 a.m.
Right, doing stuff,
and then doing stuff again when it's time to feed the horses and bring them in, and then usually again before bedtime.
And that's still pretty unusual. So we don't have like one day we do 3 hours. That's what we could do if we didn't want to work at all. Like on Easter weekend, I decided I've had enough. I want to do other things. I'm getting burnt out. And so we just worked 3 hours one of those days on Easter weekend. And we still worked the other days. And we still worked Easter. So we are getting burnt out. And I am an essential worker at my day job. So I have not, unlike a lot of you who have had to shelter in place and stay at home, I have not had that. I am not at risk or anything like that. I am isolated in an office alone, but because I keep the network going for all of the employees along with my team, but I needed to be on site because that's the corporate office.
And we're grateful for that fact.
Sure, and so
that he's able to keep working.
And we certainly have had barn help come out during this for the farm, but not as much. And it's kind of limited, and we've had to take on some more things to do because there are less people at the farm because of the shelter in place, social distancing, all those kind of things. So, so we are getting burnt out, and we are not having a less workload, getting bored or anything. We've had more work during this that we've had to deal with.
So you've got the burnout coupled with the uncertainty of what does the aftermath of all this look like of this pandemic, and when will the aftermath be? So there's so much unknown, uncertainty, coupled with we're exhausted. We are exhausted. We just would love to have gone on that trip, and I know, man, and with all the stuff going on, it feels terrible to be talking about, oh man, we missed our vacation, our day off, but everybody's problems are their own. They're all relative to your situation.
Right, you're allowed to feel those things.
We can mourn the loss of life and also the loss of, what we had.
The life
the life that we were.
The other type of life.
My family lives in New York, and that's the hot spot. And I spend every day terrified that something's gonna happen to them. So we're very stressed, and we can't even really plan a trip because you don't know what can you plan, where can you plan, and when could you plan for.
So I've told Marissa, once things settle down a little bit, business opens up a little bit, we can do a short trip maybe to Orlando. And we've not really discussed that in great detail with each other because, of course, we don't know what's going to happen. I think the hotels will be quite inexpensive because they will be asking for people. But then again, are you going into a hot zone? Are you introducing yourself to more troubles? Let's say everyone does wear masks and gloves, and that is life until everything's solved, right? So that cuts down the chance of you catching the virus or something by 98%. Let's just make up a number, right? It's very low, so everyone has to live like this, right? So that means no restaurants if we did go on vacation, certainly no big public areas. But there are, again, things that we can do in Central Florida, like public parks we could keep social distancing. Would pools be safe? I don't know. We don't have any data on that, I assume with all the chlorine, the water would be fine, but you'd have to make sure that you quite Marco Polo'd away from each other, right? So that's kind of weird. But that is a possibility. Would kids understand that? I don't know. If you've ever been to Orlando, nobody watches their kids. So, great. The little kid goes ahead and coughs on you, right? So then you've got that worry. Would you have to self-isolate when you get back from any place that is not your state and local area? Is that going to be life? It may be. It may not be. I don't know. Certainly, part of our vacations are eating. Will it be still takeout? If so, will that be good enough for us? It might be if we got a one-bedroom kind of villa for cheap, then we could live like we live now, and that might be something just to get away. But also, how much trust will we have in government and governors, right? So not being too political, I think everyone will agree that the Florida governor was a little slower to shut down things. Will he be a little quicker to open up things? Will that be enough comfort level for us? It might be for him, but maybe not for us. Again, people traveling from different areas. We're traveling from a different area. Will that be an issue? It might be an issue. So it's just kind of hard to come up with all those things and try to come up with alternate plans. We could do a staycation, but that's not realistic. We would end up working just like we do now. So, yeah. That is how you plan a vacation during a pandemic.
The answer is you kind of don't. You just have to you have to kind of blue sky things that would be neat and be prepared to pivot and change and
where is it worth it? And if there's an outbreak close, do you abandon that vacation? And of course, we love Florida. It's because it's one of those. We love going to Florida.
It's our happy place.
Right. It's part southern, which we are, and it's part northern,
which we also
are. So we enjoy that kind of weird mishmash, and the weather, the heat doesn't bother us anymore, and if it does rain, it's usually not too long. So even if it rains,
palm trees make us happy.
Yeah, the extreme white concrete that blinds your eyes makes us happy. Stupid gas stations that are regional, like Wawa, makes us happy. And all those little regional chains. And I don't feel bad saying that I like regional chain food, that 6, 10, whatever. Those, we enjoy those things. So definitely a beer taste budget,
right.
Not champagne or anything like that. So I think the likelihood of a summer trip is 50-50, which is definitely better than our fall trip, since that is, they're saying, probably when things might happen again. So could we go to a beach and be far enough away from people? Good chance. State park, good chance. Rent a kayak. good chance. Eat.
Do you pivot completely and rent a cabin in the mountains?
Yeah, that's not us.
That's not really. We're not really mountain people, but like, is that the vacation you have to do where you're really isolated? You know, you go Walking Dead style.
Yeah.
And you have to. The way you're having a vacation is if you go isolate in the middle of the wilderness. I don't know.
The good thing is I do have faith that this is a temporary thing, but is it a 2-year temporary thing? Is that acceptable? 2 years of your life? Or are we just going to give up at some point? There's already cracks right now happening that people are just like, we're okay with 3% of the people dying. That is a thought. And of course, then you've got other people who just don't believe it's happening at all. It's starting to happen. So I don't know. Of course we don't know. But that is us talking about our lives and our thoughts now in the middle of all of this. Of course, you've probably thought of some of this stuff, but there are bigger problems, obviously, in the world. But it's still not a problem. It's a problem, especially since tourism is 10% of the economy. It's one thing, and then the statistic I read today is the pandemic is the second biggest killer currently. Heart disease is number 1. Number 2 is this. Number 3 is cancer. So, looking at those numbers, I don't know.
I also trying to imagine, wearing a mask on vacation, tan lines.
Yeah, I mean, I understand we can make it Mickey-fied, and we can have white gloves, but that's...
Right, you try to imagine, is that...
could you imagine wearing latex gloves in
85, 90 degree weather with 90% humidity?
Yeah, that sounds...
That sounds like no fun.
Sounds quite unpleasant.
Especially if you have kids, trying to get kids to wear, masks.
That sounds like a heat stroke waiting to happen, too.
Yeah, so it's just, nobody knows what the end game looks like, when the end game could possibly be happening.
And of course, the end game originally didn't turn out good, but then turned out great. So, So, from Dixieland Farm, bye, everybody.